Hey guys, WorldofLos here. Been watching a lot of Hammer's videos. I've been watching a lot of Bike Passenger 7's videos, and I really like the whole walk and talk format. And I think I'm gonna try it out. Sorry if I go a little too fast or if the camera jostles and stuff. My first attempt, so be nice. Well, a lot of what Earl was talking about with his inner misanthrope really got me thinking about, my inner misanthrope. And, I really can't talk about everyone else's inner misanthrope because, people have their own ways of dealing with what's going on with them and stuff, and their own views and stuff, and I'm only one out of the billions. But I think a lot of it stems off the fact that we're born into this world with a very egocentric view. We see the world, we see all this extrinsic, stimuli from our eyes, our nose, our skin, our mouth, our ears, and we sense how what we make of this world. We kind of sense like how it affects us through our brains, through our thought processes. And doing that over the years and years and years, you learn to develop a way of understanding the world that just comes from your mind, the way you think, the way you perceive things, the way you interpret what's going on in the outside world through your brain. And I think something that helps to fuel misanthropic type of sentiment is how we project our feelings onto others, or how we want to defend ourselves against others. And in America we have a very competitive culture. And I know, as speaking just for myself, growing up in high school, it was all about sports, who gets the best grades, who's the best at sports, who's the most popular. Everything is a contest, and if you don't fit in, I was lucky enough where I was kind of a floater in high school when I was older. And I fit in with everybody and I got along well, but there's a time like before I hit puberty, I guess, where I really didn't fit in with anybody. I was like picked on because I was a runt, laughed at, stuff like that, whatever. But as I matured and hit my growth spurt, that kind of changed, and I became more popular or what have you. I guess adolescent life is very arbitrary, and capricious. But I think, as you grow up with all of that, strive for success, or that, oh, I'm a failure, or oh, I'm a winner, all that competition, all that competitive behavior, you are constantly judging yourself against others, and you learn how you are as a person depending on how you rank. It's like, oh, I'm a C student, not an A student, so therefore I'm not as good as the A student. So, and also, since we're so egocentric, we like to think of ourselves as the top dog, the numero uno, so to speak. And because you can empathize, you can try to understand what life is like through someone else's eyes, but you can only do that by comparing it from how you see life. And then you have to, think, all right, do I see life, do I interpret life the way other people do, or you can try to put yourself in their shoes, and you can say, if I were in this situation, how would I feel? And I guess sometimes empathy goes a lot deeper than that, whereas you can sort of not to sound cheesy, but peer into the person's soul. It's more of an emotional response you get by looking at somebody, not so much as putting yourself in their shoes or intellectually thinking about how they interpret life. It's like you'll see someone, and you'll see someone in a certain circumstance and doing something, you know, like Earl was saying, when the man saw Earl do that act of kindness, help that person out, even if it wasn't appreciated by that person. When you see someone do something like that, you just get filled with this this empathic surge of energy, I guess. You know, you kind of can't rationalize it. You don't know where it comes from. It's just like you tap into the other person's actions, you tap into their emotional core or whatnot, and you can just feel it, you know? Now back to the inner misanthrope. You know, I think a lot of people sometimes, like, you know, they put on those blinders because their life is so hard for themselves. They have to struggle to make ends meet. They're constantly judging themselves and putting themselves up against other people. And if you're brought up in a way that you think that everyone's better than you, of course, the first defense is to cut them down, you know? So you're gonna find all the reasons or all the ways you can to cut them down to make you feel a little bit better. Now that's like just a dangerous, self-destructive path to get into. And of course, you know, I've done it myself, and I still do it. And I try whenever I'm doing it, whenever I'm feeling anxious, whenever I'm feeling irritable, whenever I'm feeling misanthropic sentiment, I try to step back, say, whoa, why am I feeling this way about the other person? Even if the other person is a total douchebag, a total jerk, you have to kind of step back and say, you know, this person is seeing life through their own myopic or egocentric lens right now, and they're probably judging themselves against me and maybe thinking that they're inferior to me somehow, so they're just being hostile to me, or they're just being a jerk so they can feel better about themselves. And I know that that's probably not a good thing, and people shouldn't do that, but I think Earl was talking about in some other time that the way people act in certain circumstances are like forces of nature. You know, like you see a dog, and you know, some dogs are gonna bark at you. There's just nothing you can do about it, you know, that's what dogs are trained to do. I just feel like in American society, people are trained since kindergarten, you know, trained since a young age through all their formal education to be competitive and to constantly, you know, size each other up, size up the competition. And now when you're looking at your fellow man as competition and not as, you know, an ally, you're gonna start forming up, oh, what are their weak points? What are their flaws? You know, all this type of misanthropic stuff. You know, and I think that constantly comparing yourself to other people and constantly judging yourself to other people is what fuels that misanthropic sentiment. Yeah. I think it's just a very tough thing to get away from. And I think it's a problem that plagues world society, you know, and I really can't speak for other cultures, you know, because, you know, I've born and raised in America. I've traveled Europe, you know, but, you know, when you're a traveler, you get a taste of a culture, but unless you can plan to live there, which you can't do unless you're independently wealthy or just have fucking balls of steel, you know, give up everything and just backpack across other countries to get immersed in culture, it's just not realistic for most of us to do. But, you know, as I was saying, being a product of American society, I really think our country is becoming more and more fueled by misanthropic feelings and misanthropic attitudes. You know, and I think for us to try to be the bigger person, step back, try to step outside of that way of life, out of that viewpoint, and do what, like, you know, Earl's saying, if you're feeling, you know, if you're feeling angry about something or you're feeling misanthropic, just do something to help somebody out, I found. Because when you do that, it just does something to you. It releases some chemical in the brain, but whatever it is, it just makes you feel really good about yourself and about your place in society. You know, so I guess if you're gonna take anything from this pointless ramble that I'm doing, I would just say, fight anger. This is what I also try to do, is fight misanthropic feelings by doing the exact opposite. Try to be kind to people, maybe, you know, do something like Earl did, you know, or just have a random conversation with somebody, you know, get to know them. That might, you know, just ease. See someone not as a competition or a competitor, but as a fellow human being. You know, don't look at people as they're someone judging you, but as someone that, you know, could be a potential friend. Well, okay, I think I've rambled on enough. Alright, see you all later.